Hello, everybody. How's it going? Good to see everybody. Nice to talk to you in the chat. We got people from all over the place. We got New York. We got Chicago. We got, Minnesota? And New York City. So hello, everybody. It's great to see everybody here. Hello. UFO Shill. It doesn't feel very nice to call you that, but hey, that's your name. Osvaldo, my buddy, Dirk, Hale, AJ, I'm going to call you that if that's cool. Tim, Renee, all the usual suspects, Cartola, who else? Film Fantastic, lots of really, really cool people. And like I mentioned in the chat, I got in there earlier, I actually got in here early and was able to chat with some people and to get things going. Somebody says, Lazar's movie's cool. Yes, Lazar's movie, that was pretty cool. Houston and Devon, UK, Toledo, Ohio. We got people from all over the place. I'll be talking about Ohio. We'll be talking about, I'm sure we'll talk about the UK at some point. We'll be talking about Australia because there is tons and tons of new movies. Somebody said, got to see the new Lazar movie. Well, some people, you guys might know, I saw it early because I'm friends with Jeremy Corbell, the filmmaker, and I'll tell you more about that in a second too. But I should introduce myself. My name is Alejandro Rojas. I am I'm a journalist. I'm a content producer. I do all kinds of different stuff. And I write for Den of Geek, but I also have for many, many years have researched and written about UFOs. I write about them on a regular basis. I have a podcast, so I'm out there talking to people about all of this stuff on all the time. And we call the show UFO Seriously because we take a serious look at it. At Open Minds, we try to take more of a journalistic look. We look at more of the credible information. And, we look at things from a skeptical point of mind, although, of course, I'm open to the idea, I believe that there's a true mystery to UFOs, and who knows, what might be going on. So it's not like we're debunking or anything at all. And we certainly also respect other people's opinions because there are a lot of them out there, and everybody has a right to it. And we're not going to bash you for what you believe here either. You can believe some wild, wild stuff, and that's cool. The only thing we'll do is we'll kick you if you're being a jerk in the chat. So I'm going to warn you right now. Be cool. Be cool, people. So, got lots of news to talk about. Let's see. You guys are talking about Lazar's film. I'll mention that for a second. But actually, we're going to get into that quite a bit because there's so much news on it. So, why don't we go look at the browser and look at some of the stuff going on. So, I'll show you first, of course, openminds.tv. Here's the website. You've got all the cool stuff that we do here, all of our stories. You can get on our email news list. I'm in the way, but it's right there. So there's the email news list. If you get on there, we're going to keep you up to date on what's going on in Open Minds, but also with the UFO Congress, which is the largest UFO research conference. Because we focus on UFO researchers. That's what we're doing is research-based type of stuff. And also aliens. We have alien abduction stuff. We run the whole gamut. So I'm not really a specialist on abductions. I interview researchers in that arena sometimes, but we certainly talk about it because it comes up in the news when we cover the news, UFO and alien news on the show. So credible, I should say. Mostly stuff in the mainstream. And if you want to patronize and help us out, feel free to click any of these links. This will take you to some Open Minds swag. And then here, we've got all kinds of sweet stuff at the store, and we'll talk about that in a sec too. In fact, I'm going to click on this so I can bring up the site because we'll be talking about that in a bit. However, one of the things I like to do is show you my Patreon page, and then I use that as kind of a guide for the beginning of the show to show you all the stuff that I'm up to, because sometimes I'm doing stuff that is non-UFO. I write a lot about space. I get to talk to astronauts and stuff like that. But for some reason, this Christmas, it's space is taking a break, and it's been UFOs. So we're going to talk about some of the cool UFO stuff that has come up. So the latest podcast was actually my girlfriend Karen and I, Karen Bard, who owns the International UFO Congress. We're talking about alien and UFO gifts, which is fun. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you like alien and UFO junk, just like us. So we talked about that. In fact, let me come back to the screen here. See my little UFO dude back there? So we sell those, and actually they've been selling like crazy. We're sold out, so we're getting some more in a couple weeks here. You can pre-order, and we've already got a bunch of pre-orders, so we might be sold out of even the ones we're getting in by the time they get here. They're selling like crazy. We've gone to different conferences and events and also have sold them, and they're doing really well. So that's what we're talking about, the store. And just for a quick look, we won't talk too much about stuff, but we have silver and gray in those. We've got UFO books, T-shirts. Of course, we've got DVDs, including Bob Lazar, one of the only times he's ever gone and spoken to the public. We've got these UFO beanies, UFO mouse pads. I'm using one right now. We have these 3D lamps. They're super popular. Hoodies. Let's see, all kinds of stuff. We've got little drawstring brags and these little guys. And let me tell you what's been really popular. There's two things that are really popular with UFO stuff, and I think we have them both represented in our drawstring bags, and I'm going to show you. So I'm going to let you take a look. Okay, see all that stuff? See? Okay. There's one other thing I want to show you, and it's here because this is a quiz. So take a look here, and I'm going to quiz you guys. Oh, there's something not represented here, but I don't know. You're going to have to guess, and we'll see how intelligent you guys are. But out of all of this stuff, what do you think is really popular? What do you think people like to see with aliens? That's my question. What do people like to see with aliens? And I want to see what you guys think. Steph is a man. Well, let's see what you guys are talking about, too. Oh, all kinds of stuff. Sports, NASA. Oh, yeah. Steph Curry says NASA didn't land on the moon. We did land on the moon. That's goofy. In my opinion, oh, this is a great question. So someone said, Jesus cum solot. That's how I'm going to say it. I know what you're talking about. Oh, some people are answering the questions. Anyways, somebody said, Jesus is what I'm going to call you because I don't want to say your full name for obvious reasons. Anybody looking in the chat. But he says that UFO sightings are probably going up, not down. I agree. And I've gone over this, that people keep saying UFO sightings are going down. UFO sightings reported to a couple of the places that take UFO sighting reports are going down. But I believe that is because nobody knows about these places. They knew about them when they were in the media a lot more. In fact, the Mutual UFO Network had their own TV show for a while called Hangar One. But that show is over, and now everybody's forgetting. They just don't know where to report UFOs. So I don't think reports or sightings are going down at all. I agree with you, Jesus. Okay, somebody guessed about my question. What do people like with aliens the most? And the number 2 thing people like to see with aliens is marijuana. And somebody guessed that. Renee said marijuana and ET. And Renee, you are exactly right. People love. When we went to Alien Con, which had thousands of people, we forgot to put this little bag out, and as soon as we did, they were flying. We went to this event recently where we were at Bluehost. That's who hosts our website. They invited us to do this little pop-up shop, and these bags flew. People love weed with aliens. And however, this weed with aliens is only number 2. Number 1 is... Somebody asked a good question. I'll refer to that in just a second. Number 1 is cats. People love cats in space. Cats in space are the number one sellers. Is that crazy or what? So somebody asked me, what do I think of Bob Lazar's story? We're going to have a lot more information about that. In fact, we had Jeremy Corbell, who created this recent documentary on this, on recently. In fact, I'm going to talk more about that. So let's keep getting into some of this stuff. So anyway, that's what Karen and I talked about on the latest podcast. But we talked about more than just that. We also talked about, you know, these latest events that we've gone to, the differences between what kids are into as far as UFOs and aliens, or I should say younger people, because I refer to even 20 and 30-year-olds as kids, but and that's by far a compliment. When you're an old person, you call someone a kid, you're jealous. You're not making fun of them or demeaning. At least someone like me who's a kid at heart who wants to be a kid their entire life. It's an extreme compliment when I call people a kid. But the kids interface with this topic differently than the old people. So like at our conference, the old people want to sit in the lecture and they want to hear the hour and a half long talk. They'll sit there for hours if you let them. Whereas the kids don't want to do that so much. So we talk about this because we've learned so much. And merchandise, what they wanted is different. And kids love merchandise. That's how they love to express their interest in UFOs and aliens. They want to wear a t-shirt. They want to wear a shirt. The younger people, even our friends and family who have kids or are younger, they want to wear the hoodies and the t-shirts all day long. And so that's cool. You know, so we get into a lot more than just the merchandise. But it is a fun time of year to look at all the cool stuff we've discovered out there, too. So that was the latest podcast. Headlines we're definitely going to get into in a second, but I want to show you this. So if you click here, you know, on my Patreon, or even you can get to my social media. But one thing that isn't linked there is my Instagram, and I think there's some funny stuff here. And this is going to bring us to Bob Lazar. So Instagram, kids love Instagram. You got to be on Instagram. So I've been on Instagram, and Instagram's pretty fun. But let me show you Instagram. Where are you? Here's Instagram. Oh, my girlfriend, her daughter, kind of one of my stepdaughters really, is in India. So she's got some really cool stuff here. Rachel, who goes by Rachy Tiger. She's terrified of the driving out there. The driving's insane, it appears. But this is funny. So George Knapp spoke recently at the Mutual UFO Network in Phoenix here, and our friends run that, so we were there. George Knapp, huge fan. In fact, this was just last weekend, so it was really cool to be there. But you'll see I said George Knapp is speaking at Phoenix MUFON. Can you spot Jeremy Corbell in this picture? Jeremy Corbell, you'll see a JC here, is the one who created this Hunt for the Skinwalker documentary, but it was mostly based off of this man's work, George Knapp, who's an investigative reporter in Las Vegas. Jeremy is in this picture somewhere behind the podium. It's so funny. I don't know why he did this, but he was helping George, and he was running his AV, and for some reason he felt, I don't know if he surprised people or because I had to go in and out, but he was hiding behind the podium, and you could see his tattooed arms come up once in a while, and then I sarcastically then wrote, "What? Oh my gosh, Jeremy Corbell popped out of nowhere. Look, there he is." And he kind of did. He was hiding behind the podium. It was really funny. So I was texting him, and actually he was texting me while they were playing a video. So he's on stage texting me. So that's why I put that picture. By the way, this is our dog Pumpkin. This is him whining for a treat. He's probably behind me here somewhere. And then this is UFO and alien related because these are aliens. That's a monkey, essentially a human, really an Earth creature, and there's a UFO. So I wrote, "These are some of my favorite things," you know, kind of a Christmas thing. But my point is, and I just went off on a tangent, is the Lazar thing. So the latest movie that Jeremy did is about Bob Lazar. So they talked a lot about Bob Lazar. What do I believe? I believe that people should see the movie because there's some interesting things. I've been critical, and I've, posed these questions to George for years, and more recently Jeremy, about Bob Lazar, and some of what I think are the harder questions they asked in the film, and Lazar addressed them. However, one of the things, so for instance, I have a video out there where I go over this disinformation event with Richard Doty, where that really happened in the past, where the Air Force put out disinformation. And I was like, could Bob Lazar be disinformation? Possibly. He in the film, they posed that question, and he said, no, nobody's got proof for that. And it's true. I'm just speculating. But no, we don't have evidence. We don't have hard evidence for what he says occurred either. However, I'm going to have Jeremy on again. We're going to debate some of the stuff out there and this topic some more. And so I would say tune in and see what you think. Because, if you agree with Jeremy and George, that's cool. But we're going to talk more about that because we're going to get into the news here too. So I wanted to show you that, and here are the UFO headlines. Let's get straight to that. Although, I'm going to look, are there some more questions? UFOs are alien races, visitors in saucer spacecrafts from other galaxies. Maybe. The monkey is our ancestor. We've got evidence to support that claim. So that's the difference between speculation and evidence. Thank you for helping me, chatters, to show that. So let's look at the headlines. We got lots of good headlines. This has been a big story this week right here. And it was a little bit wrong. So Fox News got it a little wrong. They wrote about this gentleman, this scientist, who said that, we need to research aliens. But the story was they got the story a little wrong. They were kind of saying that this scientist is saying, aliens have probably visited us and we need to look into that. Not necessarily. That's not really what he was saying, and he cleared the air here on this Live Science article. Here's the truth behind a NASA document on aliens visiting Earth. And it actually wasn't a document. It was a presentation. And I guess this document about this presentation is because a lot of scientific conferences, you need to write a paper when you do a presentation, and so that's what this paper is. But he says here, it is not accurately represented. My perspective was simply that reports of unidentified aerial phenomena should be the object of serious study, even if the chance of identification of some alien technology is very small. And he does talk about the past and essentially the ancient alien idea. And he did this talk at a SETI conference. SETI stands for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which is actually a general term. And then there's the SETI Institute, which we're more familiar with. And that's where Seth Shostak, the lead scientist who you see on TV and stuff, works. That's the organization. And it was at their conference that this person made this speech, which I think is an excellent and important speech, because what he's saying is that, hey, and this has been a lot of our arguments with SETI, look, you guys are out here saying that there's probably not aliens can't get here from there, but at the same time, we're trying to convince everyone that aliens probably exist, that there has to be extraterrestrial civilizations out there. So he's saying, if we're saying this, if we're so adamant that there is other life out there and other intelligent species out there, then we need to be open to the possibility that they have visited us in the past and that they may be visiting us right now. So instead of just lending a blind eye and ignoring all of these UFO reports and all of this ancient alien stuff, we should take it seriously and investigate, because the potential exists that we could have been visited and we could have, be visited right now. I think that's extremely important. Some of you may be, a stupid scientist, of course. Well, at least it's moving forward. It's opening up these people and to the potential of at least researching and investigating. And I think that's important. And actually, the second link here is from NBC's Mock. And NBC Mock here is a science page that NBC has put up where they put all their science stuff here, and a lot of it is really good stuff. This picture isn't very good, although look, it's Alien Con. I was probably there, and I don't remember seeing these couple of characters, but they look terrible outfits, guys. But Seth Shostak here is writing about this scientist's paper, and by the way, you could see here the scientist's name was Silviano Colombano. But what is cool about this is Shostak is one of those people. He does these excellent talks about how there has to be life out there. Look at this, look at the numbers, look at the figures. There's got to be life. And then he's the first to say, but they can't be here. Well, this paper is actually really good, and it seems to be at least making him think, because Colombano also made the argument that, look, okay, you astronomers say that the distances are too far for them to get here, and the technology, someone wouldn't survive. But what if they've evolved? And not only that, he says, what about AI? What about robots? You cannot say that it's not possible that they have sent machines, or that these machines have become so advanced that they are essentially life and they're able to come here. They have a body that it doesn't, isn't like ours, that it's much different, and they could get here. And Shostak admits, that's completely possible. He's right. So maybe we should pay more attention to this kind of stuff. So, I think this is an example of how this paper and my new hero, Silvano, here is opening up people's eyes. Even says Shostak, a very skeptical scientist at the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. So great job, great stories. I'm glad there was some clarification out on some of this really cool stuff. There's so much really cool stuff going on. The History Channel. Project Blue Book. So we're going to talk a lot about Project Blue Book. We have been, but there's some really cool stuff that's going on. First thing I want to mention here with Project Blue Book, and this is where we're going to talk about some of the places you guys are from, like I mentioned earlier. Project Blue Book, of course, is this television show coming up in January. January 8th, I believe, is the day that it... Well, let's go make sure before I say it wrong. That's how I'm reading. I'm not really reading. I'm pretending to read, actually. But they should have had the date there. January 8th, I was correct. 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock Central. So 10 o'clock Eastern, 9 Central. So that's when you could see the show. I've already seen the first couple episodes because I am special, and I was on the special bus and they took us to we did a preview, but like I said, I invited all of you too, so some of you got to come to the preview. But History Channel's been doing some really cool stuff. So this TV show is going to be about Project Blue Book. It's going to be historical fiction, capital letters on fiction. I've written about the preview on Den of Geek. The story's not posted yet. It'll probably be posted next week, so we'll talk about it next time. But I wrote about how there is a lot of fiction. There is some fiction there, quite a bit. So it doesn't fit the history, but I think you got to understand, people got to understand, when you're writing a script, really, you don't have very many words. I think it's something like, I can't remember. It's very few pages that take up, an entire television show. So you don't have a lot of words or times. You can't introduce a lot of characters. And in real life, there's a lot of people involved. So if, for instance, Project Blue Book had a staff, it changed staff members throughout the period of time. It had a number of researchers, some who were pro-UFO, someone who were not. So what they've got to try to do is use their artistic license to kind of compact all of this into 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 characters that have to represent all of these different ideas and stuff. So it's not going to be historic. It's not going to be able to fit to the history. So they've got to do their best to kind of encapsulate the ideas and the opinions and the gist of the stories and the UFO cases that they're covering. So, and I think they do a good job of at least representing, what was going on inside of things. But then they also add some drama and exaggeration and stuff like that. But I'm hoping that it really piques people's interest enough to go look at the real information. And what's cool here is that the History Channel is providing a lot of really cool information about UFOs and about the real cases from Project Blue Book that they're covering. And here you have a map, a really cool interactive map. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. Where these are all the different cases essentially that they're covering. The first episode was this one. Fargo, North Dakota, dogfight with a mysterious white orb. A World War II veteran fighter pilot was just finishing a cross-country flight when a strange light appeared on his wing. That's just a little example. That's like a trailer. You can come here and read the rest, but they also have articles about these, and these are real cases, and these articles are not fictionalized whatsoever. So it's a really cool map where you could see all of these different cases that they're covering. I saw the episodes where they're covering this one, but the next one that they were going to cover, the Flatwood Monster. This is a wild case from 1952 where these kids and this lady saw some kind of weird creature. Great case, so I'm very excited about that. But really cool, great information here. And look, I told you I was going to talk about Chicago. Chicago is very important because, as it says here, university base of top UFO investigator. Because that is Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was a civilian science advisor to the Air Force UFO investigations between 1948 and 1969. Now, in the show, Hynek is only joins in 1950 during Project Blue Book, because there were several projects. There's Project Sign, then there's Project Grudge, then there was Project Blue Book. But here again, they didn't want to confuse people with all these different projects and why were there different projects, and so they just cover Project Blue Book so they don't confuse people. So in order to kind of just stick with that, they also have then Hynek join at the beginning of Project Blue Book, which is in 1952, which really, like it says here, here they've got the facts where you can get, the details about the real facts about all of this stuff. But yeah, he was based out of Northwestern University, the astronomy department. So that's why they're showing Chicago here and why that's important. Another really cool thing is that I got to interview today I got to interview sorry for stuttering. David O'Leary, who is the creator of this show and the main writer. And I also got to interview Paul Hynek, who is this gentleman's son, Dr. Allen Hynek. Now, he had several kids, and so Paul is one of them, but Paul is a professional. He's a futurist. He works in the entertainment industry. He does all kinds of stuff, actually, but a really great guy. In fact, he went to the last couple of Alien Cons. Will most likely incorporate the History Channel and him into the next UFO Congress. But he came to one of my talks, and at the end he was like, thank you for saying so many cool things about my dad. And the reason I said cool things about his dad, because I think that this gentleman, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, is one of the most important people in this field. He began researching UFOs with the U.S. Air Force. He was a complete skeptic, thought this was all goofy. In fact, I have some great quotes in my Den of Geek article. One of the quotes was that, a lot of people in the Air Force come at this topic assuming that it's complete nonsense, so they make it out to be complete nonsense. Even if whatever happens, they're like, oh, it had to be this. It's nonsense to think that it's something, extraordinary or that we can't explain. And he felt guilty, he says, because he was doing that. But he later saw the error in his ways because they were some really good, credible cases. So the next two podcasts are going to be these interviews. David O'Leary is really into UFOs. Really, he's just like us. You'll see he's super excited about all these topics, about Project Blue Book, all of this stuff. So we talked to him about how he got the show created or how he started creating the show, how he sold the show, got History Channel interested, and then how it's going. And it's really going great in that History Channel, of course, is a big deal. And Aidan Gillen, the character that they have playing Hynek, is so cool. Really, really cool. He was Littlefinger on Game of Thrones. I think he was on The Wire. I can't remember what else he was on. But he plays a great Hynek, and I think you all will really identify too. Hynek is, of course, a very intelligent professor. He gets involved, and actually in the show, he's more open-minded. So he's like, okay, I'm going to take a look at this. We'll see. He's not too into the topic or anything. But, when they start to investigate, the Air Force guy is like, this is stupid. Let's finish our case. This is something boring. And he's like, he finds little things that are like, well, wait a second. He's kind of, the Hynek character is almost like a combination of Mulder and Scully all in one because he's a scientist. He doesn't completely believe like Mulder, but at least he's looking into it and more open-minded than Scully. And he's like, wow, this is kind of weird. So he represents, I think, the viewer, where kind of an intelligent, curious person who we all, I think, like to think of ourselves as, who is discovering stuff that is credible. So I think he's going to be a great champion for this field. And then when people look at stuff like this, the History Channel's articles about how all of this and the history behind all of it, I really think it's going to bring a lot of people into this topic and taking it more seriously. So I'm super excited about the show. There have been some people, in fact, if you go, Mark O'Connell I've had on my podcast, and he wrote a book called The Close Encounters Man, which is a biography about Hynek. And he's been concerned, as have others, about the show, not being accurate. But I talked with both of these gentlemen about that topic, and they talk about why they feel okay about it, or why it's necessary that you can't stick to all the facts, that you've got to be exciting, like X-Files, and at the same time, you've got to do your best to be historical, but you just really don't have, in this fashion, in a television show, the ability to be just completely factual. No show is completely factual. Very few are with historical fiction. They just do their best to get as close as possible. Some are very close, some are further. But I think this one, at least Paul Hynek, Hynek's son, feels that it's gotten pretty close. And I think that I felt that he would have told us if he thought it was just, all junk. So really cool. I love the stuff that they're doing here. And in fact, you can see you've got this UFO sightings map. You have photos from the show. So there he is, Aidan Gillen playing Hynek. Really cool. And then you have some articles about, and these are all articles, serious articles about these different topics. Very cool. Very cool. All right, we got more news. What's going on? What's going on over here? Strange radar blip. What? It crawled over southern Illinois for 10 hours. What the heck? So you'll see, this is probably an article that you may have seen online because it's going around in the UFO circles. But they were getting these weird radar returns. And you'll see here, in fact, if you were to Google it, strange radar blip. Watch this, dude. I'm just gonna Google this, and we're gonna see some wild stuff here, I think. Yeah, look. Whoa, look at that. Oh my gosh, what's that? 10 hours. This is crazy. So a lot was being made. What is this big thing that they saw for 10 hours on what? And they caught it on weather radars. Was it birds? Was it meteors? Can't be birds. How can birds be flying around there for 10 hours? Can't be a meteor. Meteor's there just for a second and then it's gone. So what the heck is going on? This story goes over. It can't be this. It can't be that. This is so weird. What is it? NORAD doesn't know what it is. There's a couple close Air Force bases. They don't know what it is. But then they're like, well, some meteorologist was told by an unnamed pilot that the chaff came from that it was chaff from a military C-130 transport aircraft. So if you don't know what chaff is, it's essentially kind of this aluminum, and they spit it out of their plane when a missile is chasing them to throw the missile off, and hopefully the missile will blow up in the chaff and not hit the plane. So essentially that's what that is. And they were like, okay, well, we can't confirm that. Nobody's told us it was this person or it was that person. It wasn't these two nearby Air Force bases. Well, finally, they did get confirmation that it was indeed chaff from a C-130H from the West Virginia Air National Guard that was doing some training in the area. So, mystery solved on this one. Mystery solved, people. But not all mysteries have been solved, such as this case. One of the most important cases. This is, everybody's got to say the this Roswell or the that Roswell. This is Russia's Roswell. This is Britain's Roswell. This is Mesa, Arizona's Roswell. There isn't a Mesa, Arizona Roswell, but we can make one up. Actually, there kind of is. But anyway, this is Australia's Roswell, which is, some of you may already be aware of this case. So in 1966, there were a bunch of people at this school who saw this UFO for about 25 minutes. As it says here, a key witness in a 1966 mass UFO sighting in Melbourne claimed the object was playing games with local planes in chilling rare audio. So, there was rumors that there was audio of, this is fake too, by the way, people. There were rumors that there was an interview with one of the teachers soon after this event had occurred. It was in, often this event is referred to as Westall 66 because it occurred outside of Westall High School. Andrew Greenwood was the teacher, and people have referenced this interview, but nobody's heard it. Well, somebody found it, and this was an interview with Dr. James McDonald, who was a respected physicist that was also into UFOs and researched UFOs. He was very open and bold about trying to get the topic taken seriously. Well, the interview is very interesting. It talks about the teacher. There were people coming in saying, hey, we're seeing a UFO. You're seeing a UFO. And he's like, yeah, right. Get out of here. And finally, one of the teachers said, yeah, we're seeing something out there. So he went out there to look. He saw what they were all looking at. He said it was an object that was kind of long with a bulging kind of middle. Sounds like a saucer, right? It was smaller than a Cessna, but it was flying around very erratically and strange. He said that it would come towards them, that there was at least a plane in the sky, and it tried to avoid this thing, and this thing kind of like flew around, kind of screwing with the airplane. He said at one point there were 5 planes in the air. In the end, there were over 300 witnesses to this event, all of them saying there are planes in the air. And I guess the local airport said, there weren't planes in the air in that area. And this teacher makes a point that's actually kind of stupid of them to say, because every day, all the time, there's planes in the area. The airport, there's planes going in and out of the airport like any other airport. So that's kind of a silly statement for them to say. But So really weird case. I know there's been at least one documentary out there about it. You can read. There's multiple stories, but yeah, this is one of the genuine mysteries. This is a really good case from 1966 in Australia that remains unsolved. So here's an unsolved case, people. Good one. It's a really good one. There have been people who have speculated or who have said, well, I think it was the reentry of a vehicle, or it was a test of this or a test of that. But nothing fits that well. 1966 in Australia, would we be testing, experimental aircraft that can do things that we can't do to this day? Possibly, but not probably. So really interesting case. Back to a not so interesting case. So this is at Cape Willoughby Lighthouse on Kangaroo Island in Australia again. And this person caught this image. And we cover one of these types of photos almost every day. In fact, on our YouTube channel, we've got an interview. Mark D'Antonio was here in town, and we did this little thing where we talked about these, where people look in their photos later and they see something. This person witnessed that he thought he saw something in the corner of his eye, but zipped by really quickly. He went home and he realized, oh my gosh, I caught it on my camera. It's UFO. Well, guys, we talked about this before. Typically, if you don't see it when you're taking the picture, especially something like this, it's because it's mundane. It's something that's not that big of a deal. This is very likely, and we won't know for sure, it's out of focus. It looks like it's moving this direction, that there's this focus, there's motion blur is what they call it. So look, this is not necessarily in focus or anything, and it's zoomed in big time, as you could see. But it's not out of focus. Really nothing is as out of focus as this, because it's moving, and it is moving quickly like a bird would be. And birds look really weird. What happens with the camera is, you got to remember, the lens is staying open a period of time. So the light is catching this thing and it's getting smeared. So you've probably seen this on cameras when you keep the lens open, the aperture open too long. Everything looks weird and blurred and stuff like that. And so I could be wrong. I mean, this could be something anomalous, but you just can't tell with pictures like this, because it could be a bird. Birds look really weird when they get this motion thing happening. Go look at some of your pictures, actually, and you'll probably notice, especially if you're at the beach or something like that, like this is, there's so many birds in the air, you'll probably see in some of your very own pictures, you'll have some weird stuff. So here's the original picture. Look, it could even be a bug right above or even closer to the camera than this thing here. So, yeah, I'm not impressed. And the reason I say that is, the other thing is, and you got to remember this with photo analysis, is that what we're looking for is something very convincing, something that nobody can say, that's a bird, and you can say, well, here's exactly why that's not. You need something that is definitive, that you can prove is something else. And that's really, really hard to do. More Bob Lazar news. So because of Jeremy Corbell's documentary, we've got a lot of news about it, which is kind of exciting. So this is in Las Vegas now, written by George Knapp and Matt Adams. George Knapp is the guy who made the film. So, of course, is in the film. A lot of it is his work. So, of course, he's going to be in here. So, he talks about how it happened. But what's interesting and cool about this is that he talks about how there was 1,600 people there at the premiere last week, that there was a line, blocks down the street. And if you look at Jeremy Corbell's Instagram, there's Jeremy. Jeremy's like a major Instagrammer. So if we go to Instagram, there's no doubt at the top of my feed is going to be one of this character's. Look at that. The very second picture is Jeremy. So, yeah, he Instagrams constantly. So there's a picture of Bob Lazar at the premiere. Here's him doing some interviews. We're going to look at what that is in just a second here. But you can also see down here, He posts so much. Here we go. So here's a video where you could see there are just tons and tons of people. There we go. Look at all those people. Whoa, look at that line of people. So, and it goes very, very, very far here. So, which is pretty exciting, you know, that Jeremy had no idea. Hey, I know that guy. That guy's a follower. He may be even in the chat here. He's on my Facebook all the time. Really cool guy. And I can't remember his name right now. I know he plays the guitar, I remember. But anyway, yeah, look at this. Look at all these people. A lot of people interested in the topic, and that's what's really exciting. A lot of people interested in Bob Lazar, and Jeremy had no idea how many people would show up to buy tickets at the door. And lo and behold, look at all these people. You know what's kind of cool? That David O'Leary guy that I was talking about that was a writer for the show, the History Channel show, he's in this line somewhere. He showed up. Another person who showed up I know is Dave Navarro, who was a guitarist for Alice in Chains. He was there, and I think Jeremy got some pictures with them. I don't see him here, but yeah. So it was a big hit. There were tons of people there. So this story is just George kind of talking about how it was a hit and his experience, how it all began. It's a fairly short story. There are some other stories here as well. And we saw Jeremy Corbell at the New York Stock Exchange. If you saw that picture on Instagram, that was part of this interview. So this is a website called Cheddar that covers business news, and they did an interview with Jeremy, which we can see here. And they're at the New York Stock Exchange. How crazy is that? So that's why we have that picture of Jeremy. Go back to Instagram. Sorry, I should have kept it open, I guess. So we keep Instagram party. Oh, no way. That's Emily Trim. She is part of the Ariel School. So she was one of the witnesses in a case in Zimbabwe or was it in South Africa. And her case is going to be highlighted in a movie. There's a bunch of UFO researchers and different stuff. Wow, she has really been posting. Where the heck is Jeremy? Boop, 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 boop. Let's look for him because I want to show you. I don't know. It's maybe not that big of a deal. Just him at the New York Stock Exchange is what I was trying to show. So, yeah, so it's getting news all over the place. It's business news. And then here is a story from Nevada Public Radio. They had George Knapp along with his, Bob Stodel, which was essentially kind of his camera guy, talking about how this all began. And they both talked about how they're skeptical, but that, you know, there's enough information that keeps them interested in Bob's case and why they still feel, even though it's a wild story, and they're skeptical, that it is worth sharing. Now, I got to say, it sounds like George Knapp was sounding much more skeptical in this interview than he actually is. He's actually, and he shared this on his social media recently, he's very convinced that, you know, Bob is, I wouldn't say telling the truth. There are some problems with some of the things that Bob has said, like he hasn't been able to prove, and it seems unlikely he has the educational background that he claims to have. But, and George Knapp at least concedes that that is an issue, but he still feels that there's enough about the other things that he's saying, and from other people that he's heard from, that he feels that there's something to what he's saying. And, you know, we keep talking about Bob Lazar. In the off chance that some of you don't know, Bob Lazar says in 1989, he was an anonymous witness who came to KLAS, where George Knapp works and has for many years. George Knapp has won many, many awards. And he said, I work at Area 51 back engineering UFOs, alien technology. And but I can't share my name, and I don't want you to show my face, but I'll talk to you about this. So they were like, really? At the time, not many people knew what about Area 51. It was not famous, but KLAS had been writing articles for, by this point, almost a decade on Area 51, because they had talked to engineers who work there at this super secret base in the middle of the desert. So KLAS had been covering the story about this for quite some time. In fact, I've got links in openminds.tv and some of my articles here on some of those old stories. So it was out there. People knew that it existed. Some people argue nobody even knew about Area 51 until Bob Lazar. Not true. There was KLS very well knew what it was, but the rest of the world didn't. It wasn't famous. So they showed Bob Lazar. He said, "My name is Dennis," and he didn't use his real name or his real voice. They changed the voice, and he was in this truck. And they did the exposure so you couldn't see his face, only the background. And he said, "I work at this lab called S4. So what happens is I fly into this super secret base, Area 51. I am then bussed south of there to Papoose Lake, where on a hillside there are these hidden doors that we drive into this underground facility called S4. In there, I work on back engineering this propulsion. I'm not told where it comes from, but this is a craft. There's 9 of them. The chairs are small, too small for humans, so it can't be humans. It's got to be something else. And in fact, he said they referred to them as the kids because whatever was flying these was small in stature. And that this technology was beyond our own, way far beyond what we could have done. So it's got to be from somewhere else. And there's much more to his story. And, of course, you could watch the documentary to find out more about that. But that's essentially Bob Lazar's claim. It was a big story when he came out and said this. George Knapp and the rest of the group were skeptical. George did months of research and was able to not verify some information, but verify a few tidbits, enough that made him interested. He approached Bob Lazar again and said, "Hey, I would like to interview again." Hesitantly, and I've got a great update for you guys on this. Hesitantly, Bob Lazar said, "Okay." So they did an interview to get on the record, and then they did an interview where that Bob Lazar, that they would air on KLAS, where Bob would actually give his name and show his face. And George Knapp had told him when he approached him again, "Hey, if you don't want to do this, then let us know at any point and we'll stop it. At least up until, when we get down to it, if we're going to schedule this tentatively and prior to us, finalizing that the time and the date, then you can pull out if you want." And Jeremy told us this story on my podcast recently, but I was able to confirm it with George Knapp in person just last weekend when we was at Phoenix MUFON. We talked about this, and he gave a few more details. But what they did is they shot the interview, and of course this was done on tape back in 1990 when it was done. George took the tape, was going to the station to air the tape, and Lazar got cold feet and he said no. He took the tape and said, "You can't do this." They then got in a little mat. They were essentially not like fighting blows, but they were struggling over taking this tape, so much so that they were wrestling on the ground for the tape. And George got the tape. George is bigger in stature than Lazar is, so I can see it. George got the tape and said, "It's too late now, buddy. We've got to air this. We're airing this in a couple minutes." He went, put the tape in, they aired the tape, and George said, "Yeah, we were on the ground wrestling over this tape because Lazar got cold feet at the last minute." So that's a true story. Before I had it from Jeremy for the podcast, but now I've got it from George Knapp's mouth that really happened. So that's who Bob Lazar is, for some of you who don't know. But let's get back into the news stories. So our good friend Cheryl Costa, she writes a story every week on Syracuse New Times and their blogs and about UFOs and stuff. And This one is, why do extraterrestrial visitors come to our small planet? And she's convinced, that ETs that it is an extraterrestrial phenomena. She says that people are always asking her, why? But this is a great point here. The answer isn't easy because Earth humans don't have a clue regarding the extraterrestrials' interests. And I think that is an extremely important point. We have no clue. When scientists like Seth Shostak, who I mentioned early with the SETI Institute, say, why would they come here? I mean, what would they be interested? There's no reason for them to come here. We don't know. You cannot, informatively or even educatedly speak to the motivations of an extraterrestrial civilization because we have absolutely no basis to go off of. We don't know why they would come here. All we can do is follow the data, and if the data shows that, whoa, something is here, then we're going to have to ask them, or until we find evidence one way or another. But just because we cannot come up with a motivation for why anything would come here does not mean that anything wouldn't come here. That's ridiculous. I think that, when we watch the news or interact with people, even guessing the motivation of coworkers or people on the news, politicians or what have you, Elon Musk, why people do what they do, we don't know. But we know that they're doing it, even if we don't know why. So I think that is the most important point. Otherwise, she just makes a point that, otherwise we're just guessing. A lot of us are influenced by Star Trek or Star Wars because we've seen that. And that, of course, they have some ideas in there. She mentions a lot of us are into the ancient astronaut theory. So some of us are influenced by that as to why they may come here. She also goes over some of the work of people such as Robert Hastings, who wrote the book UFOs and Nukes, and makes the observation that, and he has military witnesses to demonstrate his point, that he feels that ETs are visiting because they're interested in our nuclear technology and our weapons, and that's what has influenced them. And then she also refers to an interview she did with Luis Elizondo, who we recently found out who retired from the Pentagon about a year ago. And then we found out he was working on a UFO project within the Pentagon. And he feels that if they're here, they seem to be interested in our most advanced military technology, which of course wouldn't be that advanced to them. But who knows? With nukes, we could be doing more damage than we even know. So she kind of goes over some of the possibilities out there, and it's great that she brings up, Hastings and some of these other things because she's educating people about some of this stuff. So really cool, interesting article there. Another interesting article from Cheryl Costa. And finally, our last story is regarding Mr. Tom DeLonge, rock star, former Blink 182 frontman. Everybody calls him, I guess because Blink 182 is so famous. He's still a rock star, and his current band is called Angels and Airwaves, and he's still the front man for that. But he used to have this website called Strange Times. And actually, that's when Open Minds, at least those of us on the staff, began interacting with Tom, because he used to repost some of our OpenMinds.tv stories on his website, Strange Times. Strange Times then influenced him to create this graphic novel. Of course, graphic novel is a term to make adults feel more comfortable looking at comic books, essentially. Now, a graphic novel is a comic book, but usually maybe a little more advanced, of course, in the writing and the art, although comic books are cool too. So it's kind of like calling a UFO a UAP. calling a comic book a graphic novel. But anyway, this graphic novel, Strange Times, is about these skater dudes who come across UFO and alien stuff, and they're investigating UFOs and aliens and stuff like that. And recently, TBS has signed up to do a series on Strange Times. I've read some stuff that it was going to be an animation, like an adult animation. However, some of these other things I've read make it sound as though it's going to be live action, so actual actors and actresses and stuff like that. So we'll see. But Strange Times, yeah, there's going to be a TV show about it. And of course, Tom DeLonge has started this organization called To the Stars Academy. He started this organization, To the Stars, a few years ago. And Strange Times, Angels and Airwaves, and some of this other stuff that he does is under this company, To the Stars. But he recently started To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences, where they're really looking into paranormal stuff, where he recruited a bunch of former intelligence people and Luis Elizondo, who we just mentioned, and they're all working to investigate UFOs. And most recently, they've been discussing analysis of materials that is potentially from elsewhere, and they believe demonstrates technology beyond our own. So hopefully we'll be hearing more about that soon. At least I've had actually fairly recent communications with Elizondo, where he's told me more is coming soon. So we'll see about that. I'm always a little skeptical until I see it, and it's just that this sort of thing, when you're revealing this sort of information, and we've talked to this to chemical engineer, he's got a PhD, Chris Cogswell, about this. It's got to be done right, and it's got to be presented in the right way to have the impact that we want it to have, that one would want some serious research to have on mainstream science and to be taken seriously. So hopefully they'll do that. They certainly have the resources and to do that. So we'll see. But yeah, they are doing stuff. And a lot of what they're doing is behind the scenes. So some people have been frustrated with their progress, feeling like, oh, they're not doing anything. But they are. In fact, we've had a little bit of insight, not necessarily purposefully, into what they're into, such as consulting and briefing government agencies. So they have talked to some of the subcommittees in Congress about, this topic. So they are making some headway in some very important ways. So there is stuff going on there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the news for the last week or so, because last week we really didn't get into news because I was just pressed for time, and so we did a kind of a one-on-one questions thing. But let me go back down to our questions. Dirk says, I think he's a little wacky, but what he's done is fantastic. Just let the other guys do most of the talking. Well, I agree with you, Dirk. And you know what? So does Tom. In fact, Tom, if you've noticed, has not been in the public eye and has not been doing interviews. In fact, someone asked me, can you interview Tom? We did interview, Jason and Maureen, who worked with Open Minds for a period of time, they did interview him for Open Minds a while ago, but not recently. He's not going to be doing any interviews on this topic for probably quite some time. And it's mainly because of the same thing that you just said. Osvaldo wants me to talk about the shareholders meeting. Let's see, I would say about that it's more along the lines of stuff that they're going to do. So they want to be more public facing. They want to be educating people more. They want to be doing television shows and this sort of thing. But yeah, so we probably won't see any interviews with Tom DeLonge in the near future. Tim is mentioning the Joe Rogan interview that Tom DeLonge did, where it kind of was not. He's saying that I'm sure that grounded him because he did not necessarily perform well. You know, when you're going to go toe-to-toe with someone, you can't be speculative. And I don't know that Tom knew that Joe was going to go after him so hard about, backing up his claims. And so, Tom was very speculative, and we haven't heard from him. Again, we've heard from some of the others, and they've been doing a good job. We've heard a lot from Luis Elizondo. Of course, we've got an interview with him at the International UFO Congress YouTube. And I'm supposed to be doing an interview with him soon. He's a busy guy, but he keeps telling me, yeah, soon, we're going to do an interview. And the thing is he often is the one who contacts me. Luckily, we've been able to meet and have dinner, Karen and I and his wife and his family, and they're just really cool. We've hit it off. They're great people. So, really cool. So, let's see. I just want to see if there's any more questions. I noticed Martin Wacky Willis is in the chat room. Good to see you, Martin. He does podcast UFO. But anyway, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you guys so much. Someone said we are up to 4 or 5 private space companies with working rockets. Think anyone will run into anything? I don't know, but that is why I'm so excited about commercial space programs. I have a story up on Den of Geek where I go over all of the companies that are going to be flying in space and flying people in space for money. And I keep promising to do a YouTube video on that, and I will. In fact, that's going to be my new thing. In the beginning of the year, I've got so much cool camera equipment and stuff. I'm going to be doing a lot more videos, mostly not on this site. I'll be doing like I do here on this site, but I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff over at my website, on my YouTube channel, the Alejandro Advantage, because I'm going to do lots of space stuff, maybe technology stuff like someone was just talking about, a lot more new stuff like that, where you guys can see me hanging out with some different people, and interviews with lots of different topics and stuff like that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But I will do a video on the space companies and where they are in the progress. You may know Virgin Galactic just did a test. What was it, yesterday or today? I think it was today, where they finally, today, they got their Spaceship 2 into space, because of course they have sold a ton of $250,000 tickets to stars, celebrities, people who want to go up into space, and they had a successful mission today. So that means fairly soon, maybe even in the next 6 months, that they will be taking people into space. The thing is, they just go into space for a few seconds, come right back down. There are other programs that are going to be taking people up where they're going to be able to spend more time. Of course, it's going to cost more money, but there are also some programs starting up soon where you'll be able to spend more time and spend less money. You don't go as high, but you still have the similar experience. So a lot of really cool stuff coming up. So thank you all so much for joining me. Be sure to check out the podcast. I really, really loved my interview with David O'Leary. I think we're all going to be hearing a lot more from him in the UFO field, because he's super hyped about UFOs, and he's super hyped about his new television program, Project Blue Book, and so am I. I understand the concerns that people have around accuracy, but, when you're dealing with the general public, I think what this show really does is inspire people, like the X-Files. Look, we don't complain about the X-Files, and the X-Files was 100% fiction. So if we've got a new show that's 50% truth and 50% fiction, isn't that better? Than none at all, but still inspires people, and at least in this perspective, inspires people to look at real information. I think that's cool. So that's going to be really cool when that show comes out. I like the first episode. The main thing that I liked about it, I'm going to go to my close screen too because I like doing my close screen. The big thing that I like about it as well is that Aidan Gillen is such a good actor, and he's so, like, you just love this guy. And that's what's really fun, and I think that's what's going to draw people in. And when they love Aidan Gillen and the character he's playing, I think that love for that character is going to then translate to being excited about the real guy, the real J. Allen Hynek, who's also a very lovable guy. So I think this is going to be very positive. I'm always a bit of a Pollyanna. I'm always thinking, oh, this is going to be so great. So, and I hope it is. So we'll see. So be sure to check out openminds.tv. Check out the YouTube. We'll have more. Check out our UFO Congress YouTube because we're going to have a lot more stuff there as well. And definitely, because it's the holiday season, go to ufocongress.com or store.ufocongress.com and check out some of our cool products like our... Oh, I got this hooked up to Alexa. So